Well, welcome to today's excerpt from John James Taylor's narrative of his visit to Transylvania in 1868. Now, today's extract is again rather more of a podcast. It's audio only, but I'll overlay it with a number of images that illustrate something of what's going on. But I'll also precede it with a short video which was taken in 2018 at the 450th anniversary of the Edict of Torda at the special service that was held in the Catholic Church, which some believe was the venue for the Diet of Torda, but which was a Unitarian Church for a long time before reverting to the Catholic Church, and where the special monument was unveiled to the Edict of Torda. Well, we'll continue with our readings from the Rev John James Taylor's account of his visit to Transylvania in 1868. In the tent where we assembled, as on the preceding day before dinner, a clergyman from Secular came up and spoke to me. He had been in prison 6 months for the part that he had taken during the Revolution. He inquired after Mr. Steinthal and desired to be kindly remembered to him. This day the ladies dined with us, and several toasts were drunk to their health, including one to the English visitor, my companion, and the speech accompanying it from Mr. Banksady contained, I was told, a very flattering allusion to the family life of England. The gypsy band was transferred to the gallery, and the discharge of ordnance, whether out of consideration for the more sensitive nerves of the female part of the company, I know not, omitted. In other respects, the proceedings were precisely the same as the day before. Speeches and music without intermission. At both these dinners I said a few words in German, in acknowledgment of the hospitable reception I had received, and of the friendly sentiments expressed towards the English brethren and England generally. I had, of course, prepared beforehand what I had to say, as I did not dare to venture on extempore utterance in a language not my own. On the first day I alluded to the friendly relations which had been established between the Unitarians of England and Transylvania, by the fact of their young men coming to study in our academy. Stated my belief that this intercourse would prove a benefit to both parties, and my hope that it would continue to increase in closeness and cordiality, and concluded by drinking health and prosperity to Bishop Kreutzer and the Unitarian Churches of Transylvania. The next day I dwelt briefly on the more general relations between Hungary and England, noticed the points of affinity between the historical institutions of the two countries, expressed the deep sympathy which the English people have always felt in the struggles of the Hungarians for constitutional freedom, and my own hope that they would be crowned at length with complete success, and concluded with proposing the health of Mr. Paget and his lady, as affording in their own happy union a living symbol of the feeling that should ever unite the two countries. Each day's proceedings ended with a ball, which lasted, I was told, till a late hour the next morning. As we should have had 5 miles to drive home in the cold night air of a Transylvanian autumn, our kind host, Mr. Paget, with his usual consideration, thought it better, after the heat and exhaustion of the preceding day, that we should not wait for these concluding festivities, I trust our excellent friends at Torda understood the reason of our absence, and would not impute it to any want of sympathy with their rejoicing, or failure to appreciate their generous and overflowing hospitality. The greater part of the ensuing week we spent most agreeably at Geresh, and we had thus an opportunity of seeing something of the adjoining country, as well as of the interior of Hungarian life. I may mention, as an amusing instance of the simple kindness of the people, that the day after the last dinner, a good lady trudged on foot all the way from Torda to Geresh under a hot sun, to present me and my daughter with a huge cake of a kind for which Torda is celebrated. She accompanied it with a speech in Magyar, which Mrs. Paget translated for us. After kissing our hands, she took her departure, and as we were assured that the said cake would keep for months, we deposited it among our heavy luggage for safe transit to England. One day, in company with Mr. Paget, we visited the celebrated salt mines of Marosvár, which yield a large revenue to the government. Among many recent reforms, the gabelle or duty on salt has, I believe, been considerably lowered. We descended in a bucket a shaft 300 or 400 feet deep, saw the vast subterranean chambers, which, when lighted up by the blaze of kindled straw, had a most splendid effect, and reascended to the surface of the earth through a long succession of galleries cut out of the perpendicular face of huge precipices of rock salt. At one place we saw a dozen men, half naked in a row, wielding their hammers to a sort of rhythmus, like the Cyclops in Virgil, loosening the excavated mass of salt from its basis, and then dividing it, as required by law, with an unerring tact into portions of not less than 85 or more than 95 pounds. On our road thither and back, we passed the country houses of several of the Transylvanian nobility. They are comfortable looking, but rather homely in their external aspect, resembling those which we'd seen many years before in Holstein, with the farm buildings and residence of the bailiff often close at hand, but not surrounded by any park or large extent of ornamental ground. The immediate neighbourhood of Geresh is flat, but it is surrounded by hills at some distance on every side, and to the west the house commands a fine view of the picturesque broken ridge of the Torda mountains. At one point this ridge is riven by a cleft which cuts right through it on a level with the valleys which it divides. This is the Torda Hasadek, from its singular formation an object of much interest to travellers, and a frequent scene of picnics. We devoted a day to visiting it, and approached it over a wild country, for the most part without regular roads. We made our way through it to a considerable distance, by leaping with the help of some friendly wallacks from one surface to another of the masses of broken rock which obstruct the course of the little stream which quietly winds through it. At length a repose and some refreshment on a smooth plot of turf overhanging the brook were very acceptable. The huge cliffs towering over our heads, which sheltered us from the sun, the ceaseless ripple of the waters, and the group of wallacks in their wild costume stretched on a hillock near us, formed altogether a cluster of impressions that was at once novel and delightful. Both this scene and the mines at Marosvár are described by Mr. Paget with his usual graphic power in his account of Hungary and Transylvania. On our return we descended the slopes of a hill clothed with orchards and vineyards, on which stood a very pretty village, chiefly inhabited by Unitarians. We noticed as we passed the Unitarian and the Wallach Church. We then forded the shallow bed of the Aranyos, and driving along the plain towards Geresh, we passed through another Unitarian village with a large church. We met and saluted the clergyman on the road. We took the opportunity while we were at Geresh of seeing the school which is connected with the Church of the Reformed in the village. Mrs. Paget takes an interest in it and accompanied us. The master was absent, but several of the children soon assembled. They seemed to read quite fluently and wrote a clear, distinct hand. They sung part of a song which I regretted to learn was tinged with strong political feeling and directed against Kossuth. I see no use in filling the minds of children with political prepossessions. Such a practice may cut both ways. Should reaction ever come, it may only intensify its violence. Both the schoolrooms, the boys and the girls are taught apart, were neat and clean, and reasonably well furnished with the usual appurtenances to effective teaching, such as a blackboard for diagrams and explanations, and pasteboard cart with letters and syllables printed in large characters, hung round the room. They used, I observed, a selection of Bible stories drawn up for the use of schools by the bishop or superintendent of the Reformed churches, and embellished with very good illustrations. I've already remarked that in Hungary each of the recognised religions supports its own schools. The school system is as yet wholly unconnected with the state. My stay in the country was hardly of sufficient length to enable me to form a very decided opinion. Still, I am inclined to think, from what I heard and saw, that a periodical inspection under the authority of a liberal government, such as now directs the affairs of Hungary, would tend to quicken and elevate the primary instruction of the country. And we'll leave our account here for now.